Okay, we'll start with this. The continued war of words between the two lightweight champions, Terry Harper and Harper and Dubois. Dubois, who says, "I'm looking through her." Carolyn is eager for the unification bout with Terry, with a women's lightweight title unification on the horizon when Harper Dubois takes on Terry Harper early next month on the 5th. Both fighters sat down with Sky Sports for the latest iteration of The Gloves Are Off. Check out some of what both fighters had to say during a face-to-face conversation filled with tension. I don't mean Nasukawa. What? Terry Harper, on when she first became aware of Carolyn, she said, "I saw Carolyn as soon as she turned pro. I did used to be a big fan of her. I think she's a good boxer. She's got a great style. But I think, once I got to know what her attitude is like, arrogance, it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth, which is often the case. Being egotistical. Some would call it confidence, others would call it egotistical, that a fighter who has accomplished so little in the sport is already patting themselves on the back and singing their own praises. Carolyn, on her beef with Terry Harper, there isn't. I think for me, I'm a competitive person. I mean, I'm looking at her. This is a woman coming to take my belt, coming to take everything I've been fighting for since I was 9 years old, coming to take my legacy that I believe I can lay, and obviously my future. If she wins, she's taken all of that, so obviously there's that energy from me. I don't understand how Harper can call herself a professional fighter and you're backing away from that energy. Though in fairness, Carolyn doesn't keep that quote-unquote competitive energy for every fighter. She's very selective, very specific about who she keeps that competitive energy for. To the point where you wonder, is Carolyn really a competitive person, or is that just her targeting the low-hanging fruit? Terry Harper, on why Dubois has been chasing her for a fight, I feel like this is a fight that she needs. She's probably disappointed that I'm the one that sat in front of her and not Rhiannon Dixon, but I like to prove people wrong. Rhiannon Dixon, who was the WBO champion before Terry Harper and is a far less experienced fighter than Terry Harper, no amateur pedigree like Carolyn. Carolyn didn't target Rhiannon because of how competitive she is. She targeted her because at the time, she was the weakest link. So is that really something a competitor would do? Terry continued, "This fight, for me, is not about the belts. Like, it's nice to win the belts, but it's even nicer to beat Dubois, and that's what I'm going for. Just to say, I beat Carolyn. I said she's irrelevant, and she is. It's not about her. I'm looking through her. I'm looking for the belts. That's what it's about. Carolyn, on becoming more outspoken and playing the agitator role, I think it's my energy. I would rather be wicked than weak. And that's just my intensity." Terry Harper on Harper Dubois taking her lightly. "I'm glad she thinks I'm going to be easy. It's good. She'll probably miss a few more training sessions. Good. Brilliant. Carolyn gives me that fire in my belly, and just more to prove doubters wrong and Carolyn wrong. Dubois. Harper Dubois on her assessment of Harper, I think she's checked out mentally. I think she's a weak person. She doesn't believe in herself, but that's not really my business. Not really my problem. I think that fight against Sandy Ryan showed a lot. I think that fight against Rhiannon Dixon showed a lot. I was like, you're a 3-weight world champion, and you're fighting like that? Damn. I don't rate you. I don't rate what you've done. I don't rate what you are as an athlete, as a fighter, as a person. I don't rate you. So I don't find Harper Dubois' egotistical behavior at all amusing, least of all when she's only got this kind of energy for somebody she's confident she can beat. She didn't keep that energy for Beatrice Ferreira when she had the IBF title, and she doesn't keep it now for the Golden Turk, Elif Nur Turan. She only acts like this against fighters she perceives herself to have the drop on, because neither Rhiannon Dixon or Terry Harper have the same amateur pedigree as a Harper Dubois, and she views that as an advantage. Even though she has no regards for Terry Harper's accomplishments so far, Terry Harper's accomplishments are why she's currently ranked at number 7 for having been a 3-weight world champion and having unseated 3 reigning champions that should Carolyn beat her, per the rules that govern the list, she will gain a spot,
and Terry will get bumped off.
In defeating a pound-for-pound fighter, you become one yourself. That's how that goes, though that won't give her a resume identical to Terry's accolades.
Obviously, that doesn't make Carolyn a 3-weight world champion by default, and Terry would be only the first world champion she will have won a belt from, so she will likely come in at the very bottom, in the number 10 spot, until such a time as she can collect more champions' scalps.
Bottom line, even with a win over Terry Harper, those eggs need more bacon. In men's light heavyweight news, Dmitry Bivol's manager reveals 3-fight plan. Dmitry Bivol has been one of boxing's best fighters for a long time, but it's only in the last few years that he's been officially recognized as such.
It is true, he reigned as a champion for something like 6 or 7 years and 11 successful title defenses, uninterrupted until he ran into Artur Benavidez.
He had been a dominant light heavyweight champion for several years. It was a 2022 campaign that saw Bivol defeat Mexican duo Canelo Alvarez and Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez that really convinced the public of the Kyrgyzstan-born Russian's quality. In that time, Bivol has made 2 more defenses and engaged in a 2-fight series with Artur Benavidez for the undisputed crown. The first fight saw Bivol lose a very contested decision, while the second saw him emerge victorious and claim the titles. Neither have fought since, but Bivol's scheduled IBF mandatory title defense against Michael Eifert is strongly rumored to be taking place on the Alexander Usyk versus Rico Verhoeven undercard, what has since been confirmed.
They've added that fight to that show. Even with that, I think that card in its entirety is going to be a tough sell when the main event is Alexander Usyk fighting in a novelty fight, a circus fight. And I like Usyk, but billing that show as a pay-per-view,
I don't know who it's supposed to appeal to. I think it's a mistake. Dmitry Bivol has been absent due to a long-standing back injury that required surgery, and he has been stripped of his WBC title in that time. This belt was given to David Benavidez, who defended it against Anthony Yarde before moving up to challenge the aforementioned Gilberto Ramirez for the unified cruiserweight titles. Now, Vadim Kornilov, Dmitry's longtime manager, has revealed what his fighter's next 3 fights will be, the first of which is his mandatory title defense against long-waiting mandatory Michael Eifert. The second fight on that list is a trilogy with Artur, a fight fans have been wanting since their rematch over 1 year ago. The third fight is the most interesting, with 3 separate options outlined by Kornilov. The first is a rematch with Canelo, the second is a mouth-watering showdown with David Benavidez, and the third is a showdown with cruiserweight world champion Jai Opetaia. This last option would imply Bivol's intention to move up and become a champion at 2 weights, something he has expressed a desire to do before. If that champion is Jai, boxing fans are in for an absolute cracker. Indeed.
So let's address each one of these fights in sequence. If you haven't seen Michael Eifert in action, he became the mandatory challenger close to 2 years ago when he beat Jean Pascal in what was an IBF final eliminator. That's how he became the mandatory, and he's best described as a mover and a jabber, a pure boxer. He's not an artillery fighter, he doesn't have a bunch of knockouts. Thus, a fight between him and Dmitry,
it has the potential to be a snoozer unless somebody decides to hit the gas and take it to the other fighter. I expect that fighter to beat Dmitry. I'm expecting him to win a points decision.
I expect him to make it to an Artur Benavidez trilogy. Artur, who hasn't kept busy in the interim following his second fight with Dmitry Bivol.
Some years older than Dmitry Bivol, and I think it would have been in his best interests to squeeze in an interim fight while he waits for Dmitry to recover. I don't think it's a good thing that Artur's been out about as long as Dmitry, but he's some years older than Dmitry. Thus, you could give Dmitry good odds to win the trilogy, win the third fight, and then move on. Beyond that third fight,
they mentioned a Canelo Alvarez fight, but I don't think for a second Canelo Alvarez will return to the light heavyweight division to box Dmitry Bivol. If that was a difficult fight for Canelo Alvarez years ago, about 3 or 4, it's an even more difficult fight now.
I don't expect it to happen.
And what about a David Benavidez fight?
See, that one is a little bit more feasible. The question is, at what weight would the contest take place? Because David is set to make his cruiserweight debut, and if he wins, I hardly think he's going to drop 25 pounds to return to the light heavyweight division. It just so happens that Dmitry Bivol's been talking about moving up. So put your thinking caps on, kids. Do you expect David, if he beats Zurdo and wins 2 alphabet titles in the process to then move back down to 175 to put his body through that, because I don't. He'll stay there at cruiserweight, and what he means to do in the interim while he waits for Dmitry to move up, your guess is as good as mine. But having 2 alphabet titles in the cruiserweight division, that would give something for him and Dmitry to fight for.
And Jai Opetaia?
Well, it's definitely a fight that's there, and even with or without the IBF title, Jai Opetaia still is this division's Ring Magazine and lineal champion. I don't get the impression that Jai Opetaia is going anywhere in the foreseeable future. He will be there, I think, by the time Dmitry moves up.
Yeah.
It's just that Dmitry Bivol moving up is not something that's right around the corner. He's got the Eifert fight, then the Better Beef trilogy, all of which will consume the better portion of this year. Dmitry moving up isn't something that I expect to happen until next year.
So that would theoretically put a Jai Opetaia fight on ice for the foreseeable future. It is definitely something that can happen with Turki El Al-Sheikh's backing, even with Jai Opetaia migrating over to Zuffa.
The fight can happen, so long as Turki El Al-Sheikh pays for it. I find Dmitry Bivol's participation in the upcoming Usyk versus Verhoeven card curious. Is he not with Matchroom anymore? Because that's not a Matchroom show.
Matchroom!
And I don't get the impression that Matchroom would be the ones paying for the Better Beef trilogy when the first 2 fights were paid for by Turki El Al-Sheikh. Has Dmitry Bivol entered free agency?
Well, if he has, that would make a lot of these fights even easier to make.
Opetaia, I think he gets hurt every fight he fights. He gets hurt with fighters that are not even known. I think he needs a little bit more experience, and I'm gonna say the same thing like David Morrell. Everybody said that he was the next big thing and that he was gonna make David look like an amateur, this and that. You know, he doesn't have the experience that David has. I think he is going to be better in about 3-4 years more. You know, I think he's lacking off experience a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, he's a good fighter. He is going to be a great fighter. But right now he doesn't have the experience that David has.
Maybe, Jose. But I would argue that Jai Opetaia has boatloads more experience now than David Morrell had when you fought him. David Morrell only had 11 professional bouts and no signature wins over any top names, where Jai Opetaia at least has been in there with Benavidez.
Jai is a veteran of 30 professional bouts with 23 recorded knockouts. A lot more experienced than David Morrell was when you fought him.
And the name of Benavidez on Jai Opetaia's resume is a better name than any name on David Morrell's resume. I would argue it's a better name than any name on David Benavidez's resume.
You know, I see Better Be Bold and Zurdo Ramirez more dangerous than Opetaia.
Do you see that fight maybe happening next?
Anything is possible, like I said, you know. I don't know if it's good or bad from going to where he is at, going to Zuffa, and now fighting in front of 1,200 people. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you have to have 2 fighters that sell.
Okay, Jose, that's your point. Tell me, how many pay-per-views did Demetrius Andrade sell when you guys decided to fight him? And when you fought an even less experienced fighter than Demetrius and David Morrell, how many pay-per-views did he sell? Was he a fan favorite? Is he now?
Let's can the rhetorical questions, because the point I'm making is neither Demetrius Andrade or David Morrell were all that well known, and David Benavidez fought them anyway. And neither of those fighters had the money behind them that Jai Opetaia now has behind him. So these read to me like excuses.
In my opinion, I think, you know, so I don't think no promoter is interested in him right now. You know, like I said, you know, our mind right now is Bivol, Benavidez, and Zurdo Ramirez. That's what we're thinking about. Later in the future, anything's possible. I think, I don't know how this is going to go now with him, with Zuffa and the titles and all that. That complicates everything, you know, at the end of the day.
Now, that's the only valid concern that Jose Benavidez raised. The issue between Jai Opetaia and the IBF not knowing at this time whether or not the IBF will allow Jai Opetaia to keep the red and gold title. That is an issue, the most valid concern,
The most legitimate that Jose expressed.
I don't know if they're going to strip him or what's going to happen, to be honest with you. So I don't see ourselves fighting for the Zuffa belt right now. So what are we going to fight for? You know, does it make sense? So I'm hoping that they don't strip him, all the guys from Zuffa, because they're just representing Sufa, I think, in my opinion. I don't know nothing about that. Like I said, I'm just wondering what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're only representing one belt, Sufa, and Sufa does not have the history and all that, you know, to be named a title that other champions have fought. So I see it complicated, you know, so you guys can understand. I don't know how that's going to go. So right now, our mind is Bivol, Benavidez, and Zurdo Ramirez. That's what's in our mind right now.
So you're thinking more win this fight, return to the light heavyweight division,
yeah.
then move on and fight Jai Opetaia? That you're thinking more that?
Like I said, you know, John Opetaia, I'm going to put him to the side because he's with Sufa right now. And I don't know how can we fight for the WBC or the WBA or whatever, you know. I don't know what's happening there, you know. Like I said, we're going down to 175. We're looking for Bivol, Benavidez, and those are the fighters that it's on the roster right now.
Now, how much of a pass you want to give the Benavidezes for Jose's recent comments all depends on what you believe is going to happen next, because they would have you believe that if they beat Zurdo Ramirez, they're going to then drop 25 pounds to return to the light heavyweight division, to pursue Dmitry Bivol, to pursue Artur Beterbiev.
I don't believe them.
I don't believe that David is going to drop back down, but if by some chance he does, and he proves me wrong, that still doesn't put him in line for a fight with Dmitry or a fight with Artur for at least another year, because Dmitry's about to fight Michael Eifert. After that, he's supposed to be fighting Artur for a third time. That would put a Benavidez fight all the way out there in 2027. Why should you do that and wait that long for the winner of that fight when you can have a fight with Jai Opetaia now?
That's why it comes off to me as excuses. Everybody knows that Dmitry Bivol's gonna have a trilogy with Artur, including Team Benavidez, and that would come before you have a fight with them.
So constantly bringing those guys up whenever you're asked about Jai Opetaia just reads like excuses, especially when he starts talking about how nobody knows Jai Opetaia. Buddy, nobody knew David Morrell.
Stop playing around. That guy was not a household name, not a very accomplished fighter, not as experienced as Jai Opetaia is now, not Ring Magazine.
Not lineal, not even a real champion at 175 at the time you decided to fight him. So when you make time for a David Morrell and decide not to make time for Jai Opetaia, that reads as excuses.
He's available.
He just fought, and you two guys are on a very similar schedule. He just fought, and you're about to fight in May, to where if you wanted to settle up with him, you could do that sooner than you'd get the winner of Bivol Beterbiev 3. The bit about nobody knowing who he is, you know who does know who he is. Dana White, Turkey LL Sheik, Sella. He's got a lot more money behind him than you have behind you.
So don't do the Johnny Foreman thing, trying to pretend that there's no money in the fight.
The people backing Jai Opetaia could get you more money than what you're about to make boxing Zurdo and relying on the antiquated pay-per-view model to pay you. I'm not the least bit surprised Team Benavidez seems lukewarm on a Jai Opetaia fight. That's what I was expecting, even though Jai will actually be available.
They're not in any hurry to fight him.
Nobody is, while they try to convince you he's so inexperienced. He needs more time.
It's all excuses, because he's a lot more experienced now than David Morrell was when you decided to fight him.